The silence in this apartment is the loudest thing I've ever heard. It's been 3 days since Kieran left, and the quiet he left behind is a physical presence. It sits on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I was prepared for screaming matches. I was ready for slammed doors and maybe even a few broken dishes. I had a whole playbook in my head for the tears, the accusations, and the dramatic, soul-bearing reconciliation that was supposed to follow. I was supposed to be the one to comfort him, to fix the hurt I'd intentionally caused. Instead, I got this. Nothing. His side of the bathroom counter is sterile, wiped clean of the clutter I used to nag him about. His toothbrush is gone. The worn-out hoodie he always left on the armchair has vanished. His side of the closet is a row of hollow, plastic hangers that rattle when a truck drives by outside. He didn't storm out in a blaze of fury. He just evaporated. This wasn't the plan. The plan was for him to get angry, to get jealous, to fight for me. I wanted to see a crack in his perfect, unshakable composure. I just wanted to know for sure that I had the power to break him a little. Instead, he just broke us. Completely. I'm sitting here in the wreckage, surrounded by the ghosts of his habits, and the only question looping in my brain is a stupid, useless one. How did it get this bad this fast? It all started because things were too good. That sounds insane, I know, but our relationship had settled into a rhythm that felt less like a passionate romance and more like a well-managed project. Kieran was the definition of stable. He's a physical therapist, for God's sake. His entire life is about structure, patience, and gentle correction. He remembered I liked oat milk, but only the barista blend. He'd listen for hours to my endless, circular complaints about my job, nodding in all the right places. He never failed to tell me I was beautiful, even when I felt like a bloated, stressed-out mess. He was perfect, a perfect, predictable, comfortable certainty. And it was driving me insane. My world is all about leverage, about finding the weak spot and applying pressure. As a corporate trainer, I teach executives how to assert dominance, how to read a room, how to use psychological tactics to get what they want. It's a world of calculated risks and power dynamics. Kieran's world is about mending broken bodies, about patience and trust and healing. He didn't play games. And because he didn't play, I felt like I was winning by default, which wasn't winning at all. His love felt unconditional, a given like the sun rising in the morning. It was a comfortable blanket, but I started to resent it, to poke at it, wanting to find the seams. I convinced myself this wasn't an act of sabotage, but a necessary, emotional audit. I needed proof that I wasn't just a pleasant part of his routine, but the entire goddamn axis his world spun on. So I manufactured a crisis. Travis, a new guy in my department, was the perfect tool. He's charming in a sleazy, harmless way, and he flirts with everyone. I started letting our work chats drift into more personal territory. Nothing explicit, just the kind of suggestive, ego-stroking banter that leaves everything to plausible deniability. "That new dress is doing amazing things for you," he'd write. "Careful, or you'll make me forget I have a meeting to lead." I'd reply with a winking emoji and something equally vapid like, "Focus, Travis. Some of us have to work." The little dopamine hit from his messages wasn't the point, it was the ammunition. Each notification was another bullet for the gun I was building. The endgame was last Friday night. We were watching some bland documentary, and I got up to get a drink. I remember the cool, smooth feel of the phone's glass against my palm as I placed it on the coffee table between us. Screen unlocked, lit up with my chat with Travis pulled up. My last message to him was, "You're terrible. Stop putting ideas in my head." I placed it screen up, angled perfectly towards his side of the couch. In the kitchen, I didn't even get a drink. I just stood there, hands braced on the cold granite counter, holding my breath, listening for the first crack in the foundation. My heart wasn't pounding with guilt. It was thrumming with a sick, directorial anticipation. I was about to watch the premiere of my own little masterpiece of emotional chaos. As I sit in this echoing silence, my brain, in a desperate act of self-flagellation, keeps replaying the memories I worked so hard to dismiss. The warning signs. The moments where Kieran laid out his entire blueprint for me, and I just glanced at it, filed it away under quirks, and never looked at it again. He was so principled it could be infuriating. A man with a moral compass so rigidly fixed, it seemed almost archaic in a world of gray areas. I remember one night, months ago, we were watching a movie where the protagonist cheats on his wife. I made some offhand comment, something like, "Well, she was ignoring him for months. What did she expect?" Kieran went quiet. He muted the TV and turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically serious. "That's not how it works, Ainsley," he said, his voice low. He then told me, in more detail than ever before, about his parents' divorce. His dad hadn't had a physical affair, but an emotional one with a coworker. Kieran described finding his mother sobbing in the laundry room, clutching a stack of printed emails. He talked about the poison of that discovery, how the lies were so much worse than a physical act. "It wasn't about the sex," he said, his eyes distant. "It was about the fact that my dad made my mom feel like a fool. He let another person into a space that was supposed to be theirs. It broke her trust in everything." He looked right at me then, his gaze so intense it felt like he was trying to burn the words into my memory. "I can handle arguments. I can handle us being angry. I can even handle us falling out of love, I guess. But I can't handle betrayal. For me, trust isn't an optional feature, it's the foundation. Once that cracks, the whole house comes down." I remember nodding, maybe even squeezing his hand and saying, "Of course, baby." But I wasn't really listening. I was hearing the words, but I was processing them through my own filter. To me, his foundation was just a story, a piece of his past that made him who he was. I saw it as a vulnerability, sure, but in my arrogant mind, it was a vulnerability I could manage, a button I could press if I ever needed to. I didn't see it as a non-negotiable, a fatal red line. I thought his love for me would be the exception to his rule. I thought I was special enough to crack the foundation and then patch it up with a few well-placed apologies. I wasn't just playing with fire. I was taking a sledgehammer to the cornerstone of his entire emotional structure and telling myself it was just a little tap. The moment of truth played out in a way that was so much quieter and more devastating than I ever could have imagined. I came back into the living room with 2 glasses of water I didn't want and sat down, my body buzzing with a toxic, nervous energy. I tried to focus on the documentary, something about tectonic plates shifting deep beneath the earth, but my entire nervous system was a tripwire, waiting for the slightest touch. For a few minutes, he didn't move. Then, slowly, as if the phone were an unexploded bomb, he reached out and picked it up. I held my breath, pretending to be absorbed in the show, but my entire world had shrunk to the space between us on that couch. I watched his profile from the corner of my eye, cataloging every microexpression. I saw his thumbs scroll up, then down, then up again. I saw the slight furrow in his brow. My stomach twisted. Here it comes, I thought, a perverse part of me almost giddy with anticipation. I was ready for the explosion, for him to throw the phone across the room, for his face to contort in rage. I wanted him to jump to his feet and yell, "Who the hell is Travis?" I had my lines ready. I would feign shock, then slowly break down, confessing that I was just feeling insecure and needed to know he cared. It was a disgusting script, but I had rehearsed it. But the explosion never came, he just read. His face didn't flush with anger. It drained of all color. The change was terrifying. It wasn't the hot, vibrant flush of fury. It was the cold, pale emptiness of a system shutting down. The tension in his shoulders, the easy way he was leaning back against the couch, it all just dissolved. He looked deflated, broken. It was the crack in his armor I'd wanted to see, but it wasn't a crack, it was a complete disintegration. After what felt like a lifetime, he gently placed the phone back on the table, exactly where I had left it. The screen went dark. He turned his head and looked at me. His eyes weren't filled with fire, they were filled with a profound, soul-crushing disappointment. It was the look you give a stranger who lets you down, not the person you love. It was the look of someone realizing they've been sold a counterfeit. "You're not even trying to hide it," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, spoken with a chilling calm. His voice was steady, without a tremor of anger or sadness. It was the voice he used with his patients when delivering bad news. "You wanted me to see this, didn't you?" The air left my lungs. My carefully prepared script, all my manipulative lines and crocodile tears, vanished. They were useless, childish tools against this cold, hard finality. All I could do was stare at him, my mouth opening and closing like a fish. The silence was my confession. He nodded slowly, a single, final gesture of understanding. A terrible clarity dawned in his eyes, as if he was finally seeing me for exactly what I was. Not the woman he loved, but a hostile strategist in his own home. "Okay," he said, the word so soft it was almost a whisper. "I get it now." He took a deep breath, the kind you take before you dive into ice-cold water. "We're done, Ainsley." That was it, no shouting match. No dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet, clinical diagnosis of a relationship that had flatlined. He wasn't a wounded lover fighting for us. He was a doctor, calmly calling the time of death. His calm was a wrecking ball. It smashed through all my defenses, all my planned-out scenarios, leaving me exposed and stupid. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced through my arrogant haze. This wasn't the game I had set up. He wasn't playing his part. "What?" "Kieran, no," I stammered, the words feeling clumsy and foreign in my mouth. "It's not what it looks like. It was a joke, a stupid test." The excuse sounded pathetic even to my own ears. I scrambled off the couch and knelt in front of him, trying to grab his hands, but he pulled them away. "A test," he repeated, and for the first time, a flicker of something raw, not anger, but a deep, cavernous hurt, surfaced in his eyes. "You think my trust is a game show. You think my biggest fear is something you can just poke with a stick to see if it flinches." My entire idiotic plan crumbled into dust. The words poured out of me in a desperate, incoherent flood. I told him I loved him, that he was the only one, that Travis was a nobody. I explained that I was just insecure, that I needed to feel he was passionate about me, that I did it for us. Each justification I offered only seemed to make the hole deeper, highlighting the grotesque selfishness of my actions. He listened to the entire pathetic monologue without interruption, his expression unchanging. He wasn't debating me. He was observing me, like a scientist studying a particularly unpleasant insect. When I finally ran out of words, dissolving into choked sobs, he stood up. He didn't offer a hand, didn't say a comforting word. He just walked into our bedroom. I followed him, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor, still pleading. "Kieran, please just talk to me. Yell at me. Throw something, just don't do this." He ignored me. He opened his dresser drawer and pulled out a duffel bag. Then, with a methodical calmness that terrified me, he started packing. A few t-shirts, underwear, his DOP kit from the bathroom. He moved with a quiet efficiency, as if he were packing for a weekend trip. There was no rage, no hesitation. It was the detached, decisive movement of someone who had already left in their mind and was just waiting for their body to catch up. I stood in the doorway, my pleas turning into whimpers, watching the man I loved systematically erase himself from our shared life. When the bag was packed, he zipped it shut and walked past me, still not making eye contact. At the front door, he placed his keys on the small entryway table. The soft click of the metal on the wood was the sound of a guillotine blade falling. "I'll have a friend come for the rest of my things next week," he said, his voice flat and final. And then he opened the door and was gone. The door clicked shut, and the deadbolt turned. Just like that, it wasn't an ending. It was a deletion. The next 2 days were a blur of denial and frantic, one-sided communication. I left a dozen voicemails, my tone shifting wildly from tearful apology to angry accusation. I sent a tidal wave of texts that went from green to undelivered. Blocked. I tried his work email, his social media, everything. Nothing. It was like trying to scream into a vacuum. On the third day, desperate and unraveling, I called Bate. She's our mutual friend, the one who introduced us. I launched into my carefully edited version of the story, painting Kieran as cold and unforgiving, and myself as the victim of a misunderstood, albeit foolish, mistake. I cried, I lamented, I waited for her to offer the soothing validation I so desperately craved. The silence on the other end of the line was long and heavy. When she finally spoke, her voice was stripped of its usual warmth. It was flat and tired. "Ainsley, what did you think was going to happen?" "I don't know," I wailed. "I thought he'd be mad, we'd fight, and then we'd make up. I didn't think he'd just leave." Bate sighed, a sound heavy with a disappointment that mirrored Kieran's. "You didn't just make him mad. You took his deepest, most painful trauma, the one thing he ever asked you to protect, and you weaponized it. You used it to entertain yourself. This wasn't a test, Ainsley. It was an act of profound cruelty. You weren't trying to see if he loved you. You were trying to see if you could hurt him. And you did. Congratulations." Her words were like a bucket of ice water. The call ended soon after, the friendly warmth between us replaced by a strained, awkward chill. I hung up, shaking, the last of my self-pitying delusions shattered. I was the villain. I was the monster in the story. The realization sent me into a new kind of frenzy. I started tearing through the apartment, not looking for anything in particular, just needing to do something with the horrible energy coursing through me. I pulled open the drawer of his nightstand, hoping to find a forgotten note, a clue, anything. Instead, I found a small, leather-bound notebook. His handwriting filled the pages. It was a jumble of thoughts, lists, and sketches. Then I found it. Tucked into the back pocket was a printout from a travel website, a week-long itinerary for the Amalfi Coast in Italy. Pictures of cliffside villages and sparkling blue water. At the top, in his neat, careful script, were the words, Ainsley's 30th birthday surprise. The dates were for next month. Tucked behind the printout was a receipt for a deposit on a small, private villa. The final payment was due last Saturday, the day after he left. The day he found out the woman he was planning a future for was playing games with his heart. The paper felt like it was burning my hands. This wasn't just a trip, it was a future. A beautiful, sun-drenched future I had just burned to the ground. It's been a month now. I couldn't stay in the apartment. Every empty space screamed his name. I'm staying on my sister's couch, living out of 2 suitcases, a walking cliché of a woman whose life has imploded. The vibrant, confident corporate trainer is gone, replaced by a ghost who spends her nights scrolling through a tiny screen, searching for signs of a life that no longer includes her. My life has ground to a halt, but his, of course, has not. I created a fake social media account, a pathetic, hollowed-out profile with a stock photo of a sunset, just so I could watch him. It's my own private, self-inflicted hell. He hasn't posted anything dramatic or sad. There are no cryptic quotes about heartbreak. There is just life. Normal, happy, forward-moving life. He went on a hiking trip with friends 2 weeks ago. There's a picture of him at the summit, grinning, his face flushed from the climb, the mountains stretching out behind him. He looks free. Last week, he posted a photo from a barbecue. He's in a group of people, a beer in his hand, laughing at something someone off-camera said. It's a genuine, unburdened laugh. The kind of laugh I haven't heard from him in months, I now realize. The kind of laugh he had before I started my sick little experiment, before I started trying to dim his light to make my own feel brighter. The worst was yesterday. A picture of him at the beach with a group, and in it, he's standing next to a woman. She's laughing too. He isn't touching her, there's nothing to suggest it's romantic, but it doesn't matter. The simple fact is that he is there, in the sun, surrounded by people, moving on. And I am here, in the dark, my face illuminated only by the glow of my phone. My thumb hovers over that photo, zooming in, then out. I analyze his smile, the crinkles around his eyes, searching for any trace of the pain I inflicted. There's none. There is only peace. I got exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see a crack in his armor. I wanted to see him break. But I was so arrogant, so blinded by my need for control, that I never considered the simplest outcome. That a man like Kieran, a man of principle and quiet strength, doesn't try to repair broken armor. He just takes it off, sets it down, and walks away, leaving the person who broke it to stand alone in the wreckage. I won my stupid game, and the prize is a front row seat to the rest of his happy life. A life I am no longer invited to.